Welcome back to the channel, family, and another podcast. My name is Paul in Peterhead in Scotland. Very happy member of CA, and I'm delighted to have been joined by Eve.
Hello, Eve here, grateful member of CA from the UK.
Brilliant. And yeah, so there's lots of broadcasts on this channel already, folks. If you've got a problem with drug addiction, please check out the other podcasts, or if you're in recovery, there's lots of content. I think there's now over 60 broadcasts, and we add each week. Feel free to get involved in the conversation, whether you see this posted on Skype or YouTube or intherooms.com or WhatsApp. Later on in this broadcast, we'll put up some information about meetings, how you can get to face-to-face and online meetings. So without further ado, I'm really pleased that you've come along today, Eve. And do you want to start us off with a topic of your choosing?
Yeah, sure. So today I've picked from the start, right at the beginning of the book, The Doctor's Opinion. It's page XXVIII. I'll let you get up on the screen.
Oh. How's that? Is that it?
XXVIII, so just a little bit further in. There we go. And I'm going to start from just at the bottom. So men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it's injurious, they cannot after a time differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontent unless they can experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless the person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once the psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules. And I pick this bit because it starts to detail, the straight away in the big book, we've got a doctor's opinion who was a real doctor, and this is like his medical opinion, and it details the patients and things and how he's seen. But what really brings it home for me in this part of the book is where he says, we are restless, irritable, and discontented, which is one of the reasons why I use drugs and alcohol to mask everything that I didn't want to feel, and it became my coping mechanism. But then the coping mechanism fails to serve you after a while, and it becomes the problem, and so you're in this awful vicious dark cycle you can't seem to break. And he goes on to say about the entire psychic change. Well, the entire psychic change comes through, it says, being that required to follow a few simple rules. Now those rules are what we call the 12 steps in this book. And those 12 steps are basically a fundamental kind of work for our new way of life that you can embrace. So if you come into CA, you get yourself a sponsor who take you through these steps, and they do that, of their own free will and their own time. You find somebody who you can connect with, and you go through them, and you do. By the end of step 12, I found that I had an entire psychic change. I had managed to go from being somebody who would step on my grandma's grave, if someone offered me something and I wanted it, I'd step over anybody to get there. And I managed to completely and utterly change my life and become now a decent member of society who contributes to society. I'm no longer a selfish, lonely being. I have CA, and I have the fundamental steps in order for me to live a really clean, good life. It's not just surviving anymore. It's I have a really good life. And for me, this few paragraphs sums up this book completely, from literally going from, I like the effect of taking Coke, and so I'm going to do that all the time. But then I can't deal with life anymore. I'm irritable, restless, and discontent all the time. And then all of a sudden I find this program and I go through the steps and I develop a psychic change. And this is my experience, but it's also the experience of so many other people within CA. If you really embrace the work and you embrace your believing in a higher power of your own understanding, that's what happens. You have a complete psychic change that completely changes your life. And I'll leave it there, Paul, so you can share back.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Eve. That was great. It's a great bit of the book. And I just want to say in general terms, recovery, abstinence, solution, and sticking around meetings, listening in meetings gives you give me an ongoing vital spiritual experience wherein I'm engaged in sobriety. You know what I mean? I'm conscious of the problem of alcoholism, stroke addiction. I'm conscious of the solution of sobriety, of recovery. And, I'm clear today that I'm clean by the grace of God, and the company I keep. I'm clean today by the service I do, the folks I talk to, the folks I don't talk to. You know what I mean? The things I talk about, the things I don't talk about, the places I go and the places I don't go. I'm clear on that. I'm clean today because of the literature I read. And here we are once again in the big book, probably the most epic book on recovery ever written. I'm clean today because of my personal spiritual literature, the scripture, that I read every day, and I read with others every day, as well as reading myself. I'm clean today by the steps I've taken and the commitment to abstinence in God's power by maintaining a reasonably fit spiritual condition. That's why I'm clean today. I'm not in any doubt as to why I'm clean today. And I love this bit really, because it says there about the effects produced, and I've had to say that to many men and some women over the years. They say, I don't know how I do it. I'll say, well, I do. Why? Well, you like the effects produced. And sometimes they don't like to hear that. No, I don't like these. Well, you do. No, I don't. Well, you do. And it's an interesting discussion, because you see, pride and arrogance and delusion are often the portion of a befuddled and confused alcoholic addict. You see, they don't quite know what's going on, and they're not keen on admitting that they enjoy the ease and comfort from mood and mind altering substances. But that is the case. Thankfully, eventually, we usually, through a conspiracy of circumstances, as it were, we no longer like the consequences produced. So the consequences produced, the problems produced, begin to outweigh the feelings of goodness that are induced through mood and mind altering substances. And then we often have the desire to get clean, or at least I did. The last thing I got clear of was alcohol, Eve. And I'm glad to say it was some time ago. It wasn't like vodka or anything, and there wasn't vast quantities of it, nor was I sleeping around in the gutter or anything. But that doesn't matter. It became a solution. And then thankfully the solution became a problem, and today I stay in the middle of the boat. I stay close to folks that are clean and living a new way of life. Living to use, using to live. An addict is someone whose whole life and thinking is centered in drugs, ways and means to get more. And I remember that. I remember getting clear of hash, weed, and very much restless, irritable, and discontented if there was none left. I was not particularly spiritual unless I'd had some. And it's that sense of ease and comfort. Yeah, it talks about an entire psychic change. If anyone's new, and they're still using drugs, what we mean is a change of perspectives, an internal shift, a change within that God produces in the heart. And we no longer see life in terms of, the obsession to drink and use is removed. We go through the process, and you mentioned a few simple rules, Eve, and I like how you see that. I very much like that. I would also say, that there are others. Not to say there's other steps. Not that I'm being controversial, but what I mean is, I work with folks every day, and I was talking to a young chap earlier today that's at his wit's end again, and this is a kind of lad that's chronic addict, and he asked me today, how can he get clear of that merciless obsession? He asked me this afternoon. And my answer was, well, here is a dozen suggestions, and those suggestions are this. If you've recently been using drink and drugs every day, it's a good idea to do a meeting every day. It's a good idea to read a couple of pages of this book every day minimum, and it's a good idea to read your own personal spiritual literature every day. It's a good idea to pray morning, noon and night, and during the bits in between, more prayer, more power. Consistent step work, at least 2 conversations with, substantial conversations with folks in recovery every day. Find a face-to-face home group, find an online home group, practice meditation, build a support network of around half a dozen folks that care about your sobriety. You don't need to tell them your bank balance, they just care about your sobriety and you care about theirs. And everyone that I've seen you do those things has stayed clean and sober. Everyone, and they are, to me, just to give a different take on things, the few simple rules. And part of them is, of course, that, the consistent step work with a sponsor. And having gone through the 12 steps, they have to practice a daily program of action, which is largely made up of the things aforementioned. So it's a beautiful bit of the literature. I think I'll just leave it there for now. Do you want to come back in on that one, Eve, before I bring my topic?
Can do. Just to I think that's a good way to see it as well, though, because that's why I love doing these, though, because it gives me a new kind of perspective on what I read. Is because I always see like the steps as the rules being the steps, but you're totally right. I totally agree that it needs to be included in that. Really, the few simple rules, though, is that you do keep connected, you keep with the unity of the program. In the front of my book, I've got the triangle, the solution triangle there, which is unity, service, and recovery. So it's all those 3 things together are what keep me on the straight and narrow and keep me clean every day. With my relationship with my higher power, from going through a psychic change now, and I have this, I can't explain it, this strange relationship with a higher power now, that I just know everything will always be okay for me, because I'm no longer trying to take control of everything in my life and filling myself with poison to try and block out things, because I'm allowed to feel things, and I'm and if I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling any kind of strong emotions, rather than going and picking up a bag of cocaine or a bottle of vodka, I can phone my sponsor and I can phone my fellows, or I can go to a meeting. I can do something like this and offer service back, and have a sponsee who I also need to make sure that I keep clean for, because I know that it's something that Paul has mentioned before, is emotional maturity is a big thing with this, because once you come into the fellowship, I am responsible for my own recovery, but I also have a sense of responsibility now to a sponsee. And so if I was ever to decide to make a choice to just pick up a drink or do a line of cocaine at a party or something like that, not only am I going to be letting myself down, but there are other people who I also now have a certain amount of responsibility for. And I find that that helps keep me disciplined, because before I had no discipline whatsoever. So this program also teaches me a level of, of discipline, but also self-respect. Now I have enough self-worth in myself to think I don't need that stuff. I don't need to ever turn back to it again, because CA and my higher power and the relationship that I now have has fully armored me, and I'm armed with the facts. I'm armed with a big book. And because of all of this, taking on a few simple rules, which we can overcomplicate sometimes. I know I did when I first joined CA. I decided to make it into this big thing in my head. Really doesn't need to be complicated. It is literally so as simple as you joining CA, having your triangle, having your higher power, your unity, and going through the steps with a sponsor. And it's really not difficult to do in a sense. It can be very hard, obviously, to get clean and to stay clean. But if you can truly embrace it, that difficulty goes away. It went away for me very quickly. And I found that I really enjoy being clean and sober, and I have no desire. That desire and that compulsion for me has completely left me from only being in CA for a few weeks. And I'm pleased to say it's never come back even yet. I've been through some pretty rubbish things, because you don't come into life as sobriety and everything's peachy all the time. There are bad things. Life still happens, but I have a way to deal with it now when it does go bad. So I'll leave it there for you, Paul.
Absolutely. And it's working with others, and I know you do that now, and the way that you work with others matures and changes. Not that I'm saying how you work with others needs to mature, don't misunderstand me, but it does. You know what I mean? You as you grow, your perceptions change as you stay the course, trust the process, and do all the suggestions and stay connected and get into prayer and literature and build on your spiritual journey. Perceptions change, and in my experience, everyone that works with others, quite how they do it, the dynamics of it changes as they grow, and my experience has been that, I've seen a good number of men and women, that have engaged in a thorough transformative 12-step process, Eve, and they've been completely different persons at the end of the 12-step process. Right? I've seen that many, many times. I have seen real marriages healed and real blokes get their partners and their children back. Real folks that were in hotels snorting coke in front of a laptop, you know what I mean, move back in with their families. Folks not die, folks get their sanity and their health back over a period of time. I've seen many, many miracles, and but conversely, you get some folks where you just get a window of opportunity. You might do a really strong step 1 with them, a really strong step 2, and you've given them all the resources, you've given them your best for a few hours, and then poof, they're gone. Right. So that's why you quite what you say and how you say it, evolves over a period of time. And those persons, I mean, it's like a farmer. A farmer always plants the best seeds in the best way possible, and if he learns new techniques, then he will employ those, and quite how we carry the message, it does, we do grow, yeah, so that's about it. Shall I move on to my topic on page 18? Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem at all.
Right, hold on. So I am on page 18 of the big book. There it is. Right. So it's just halfway down there where it says the ex-problem drinker who's found the solution, who is properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. That the man or woman who is making the approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he is talking about, or what she is talking about, but their whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a person with a real answer, that they have no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful. But there are no fees to pay, access to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we've found most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. None of us makes a sole vocation of this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. All of us spend much of our spare time in the sort of effort which we're going to describe. A few are fortunate enough to be so situated that they can give nearly all their time to the work. So that's the key there, the bit in italics. If you're living in the solution, then you're armed with facts about yourself, in the grace and power of God, and you're able to reach out to others in that grace and power with the truth of your own alcoholism, your own addictive tendencies, and the solution that you practice. Dr. Bob was accounted as having said some of his words to Bill were, you carry the message, and if necessary, use words. You might be the only big book somebody encounters. And then something else that were supposedly the last words that Bob said to Bill before he died was, Bill, don't lice this thing up. Keep it simple, And I love these quotes, because that is the bottom line. Keep it simple. If somebody's prepared to get authentic about their consequences and the reality of their drinking and using, then recovery is possible. And I think step one is absolutely vital, because that's where we get honest and transparent about the reality of our using, don't we? Often for the first time, particularly when folks are fresh in. And it says there that an alcoholic addict, properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence from an alcoholic addict in a few hours. Well, I suppose, how would you know you won the entire confidence? But I have, you can win folks' trust pretty quickly. You know what I mean? If you're rightly related towards God, if you're connected with God, and you're moving along right lines, and you're practicing the principles, and you're doing the deal on a daily basis, you can usually reach an addict much quicker than that, because they begin to realize that you've been where they're at. Some are harder than others, don't misunderstand me. Some folks take more convincing. You see, a full, there's no room in a full cup. If their cup's already full, you know what I mean? If they think they know everything already, then there's no room for any true knowledge of alcoholism and sobriety to come in, because they already think they know the answer. But if they're desperate enough and willing enough, then they're willing to take the suggestions. And if they're willing to take the suggestions, then they can get and stay clean. So that's about it from me for now. Eve, over to you.
Yeah, this part of the book is fantastic, especially where it says, that he has no attitude of holier than thou. When I first came into CA and started going to meetings, I mean, one of the things I was dreading is feeling like I was being condescended or preached to or told, because the last thing you want to, the last thing I wanted as an addict was to come in and be told, right, you have to do this, you have to do it this way, you have to believe in God, and that's kind of my perception of it was that was how I thought it was going to be, and that's what put me off actually reaching out, I think, first, because you hear things people talk about. I never heard of CA, but I'd heard people talk of AA, and that was always seemed to me synonymous with religion. And it wasn't until I started going to the meetings and listening to people speak and hearing that it's the facts armed about themselves. I went through to quite a few women's meetings, And some of the women that are part of this fellowship, I can't even begin to tell you how inspirational, how strong, and how amazing they are. And the more I started listening, really listening to them, the more I realized that they weren't trying to preach to me. They weren't trying to tell me what I had to do. They were trying to show me what I needed to do. This is what you can achieve if you come and be a part of this. And this is what, you can, this is what my story has been. And this is what I have done. And I can show you how to do that if you just want to take that chance. And as I say, I've never felt in CA that I've ever been talked down to, and I've never had anyone try and preach to me about, well, you're not as bad as addicts as me, or me, or I've never been made to feel like I don't belong here because maybe I wasn't as bad as someone else. Everyone who was in CA that I've ever come across, which has been quite a lot because I have done quite a lot of Zoom meetings and things, I've always just felt like all they want to do is reach out to me and reach out to anyone who is suffering and say, look what can be accomplished. If these are my facts, I'm armed with the facts about myself, I know myself now, let me show you how I can do that with you, and I can help you. And I just think this bit is so beautiful because it really does showcase what CA, what we're here for. We're not here to try and tell you everything that you need to do. We're here to show you what we have done ourselves to change our own lives, and we're here to guide you through it. You need to have the willing yourself, because you can't depend on another human being to bring you through the addiction and to cure you into sobriety. Unfortunately, that isn't ever going to happen, because you need to have that willingness in yourself. But if you could just listen to the people, and you could you really see how much that they are armed about the facts. They know the big book front to back. They know the steps. They know what needs to be done to be healthy, to be happy. So if you just listen to them and take their advice, you'll find that it really truly works, because that's what happened with me. I got put in touch with quite a few strong women, and just having a couple of conversations with some of these ladies has been an absolute inspiration. I mean, there's lots of amazing men as well, but I think women can be underrepresented a little bit in CA sometimes, because women, I find, are a bit more shy to come forwards, or can be a bit more shy. But there are plenty. If there are any women who are listening to this podcast, who aren't sure, there are women's only meetings that are held on CA, and if you feel uncomfortable being in a meeting with men, you can come to a women's only. And same for men, there are men's only meetings. But if you can just come and listen to these inspirational people, you'll see, put in practice what we read about in these books and things as well. And you know it's so important that once we've been through the steps, and we carry on, and we try and carry this message out to anyone still suffering, or anyone who needs help, because that's now, as it says in the book, it's our purpose now, is to do that. I'm going to give back freely what was given to me, the help, the support, the knowledge that was passed on to me when I first joined, and decided I'm going to give this a go. It's now one of my biggest passions is to reach out and to carry this and to help others. So any newcomers or anyone suffering, there's such a whole range of meetings that you can come to, and you can really see you can see the difference, and that you can see the psychic change happening in the rooms. And I just think that's an absolutely beautiful thing. And I'll leave it there for now, Paul.
Brilliant. I've got another topic, if that's okay.
Yes, fire away.
And it's page 66. And it's coming up on the screen in just a moment. My thought is the thought of keeping a clean heart, and how important that is in recovery. Keeping a pure heart, a good heart, and not an evil heart and a bitter and twisted heart. So it's page 66, and it's halfway down. It says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to futility and unhappiness, to the precise extent that we permit these to squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic addict, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely great. We found that it is fatal. For when harbouring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol or drugs returns, and we drink and use again. with us to drink and use is to die. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They made it the dubious luxury of normal men and women, but for alcoholic addicts, these things are poison. We turned back to the list, for it held the key to the future. We were prepared to look at it from an entirely different angle. We began to see that the world and its people really dominated us. In that state, the wrongdoing of others, fancied or real, had power to actually kill. How could we escape? We saw that these resentments must be mastered, but how? We could not wish them away any more than alcohol or drugs. This was our course. We realised that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, though we did not like the symptoms and the way these disturbed us. They, like ourselves, were sick too. We asked God to help us show them the same tolerance between patients we would cheerfully grant a sick friend. When a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick person, how can I be helpful to him or her? God save me from being angry, thy will be done. We avoid retaliation or argument. We wouldn't treat sick peoples that way. If we do, we destroy our chance of being helpful. We cannot be helpful to everybody, but at least God will show us how to take a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one. So quite a lot of information there, but as I say, my theme is the importance of keeping a clean heart, because it's very much connected with sobriety. Emotional sobriety, you mentioned it earlier, the emotional maturity, which means that when I get butthurt, I don't turn into a whiny ass and think that I've got to go and get drunk or high to medicate my feelings because I'm so put out. You know what I mean? Resentment means to resend the mentality of something. Oh, I remember what she said or what he said. I remember the way he looked at me. Oh, that guy looked at me. We sit around and we stew on it. The pity committee comes out, and we get angry. And anger and being argumentative is not a good thing for a recovering alcoholic addict. So that's my thoughts, Eve. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely and utterly agree. Resentment only leads to futility and unhappiness. Well, I know how true that is. But that's one of the steps, step 10 and 11 is where we kind of, at the end of every day now, I review my day and I'll go through and you answer a set of questions and, was I resentful today? Was I angry today? Was I afraid today? And for me, that's extremely important because I once heard share in a meeting that the problem with an addict like myself is that I can get a seed of resentment. So that's tiny seed in one day, but I don't put that on my inventory and I don't, pray and I don't hand that over at the end of the day to my higher power, or I don't discuss it with anyone else. Well, the next day that seed's turned into a grape. And then the next day again, that turns into a grapefruit, and then it turns into a watermelon, and that's that. It starts to snowball out of control until actually that one tiny seed of resentment that if I'd have just discussed and handed over, grows and grows into something insurmountable for me, and then eventually I'll decide I can't be bothered with this. Something else will happen, and I can't deal with two things at once. And do you know what happens? I'm going to get a drink, and as soon as I put a drink in me, I'm getting a bag. And that's it then. And then I just think, oh, wow, I've relapsed now. I might as well just carry on. And I'm privileged enough that relapse hasn't been part of my story so far. Because I really believe that's because I don't hold on to any resentments anymore. I don't hold on to any kind of hatred or anything that happens. If something happens to me during the day, I take a step back, especially if I'm at work or something, take a step back and I'll just say a little serenity prayer and think about what I'm going to do and just say, oh, to my higher power, oh, guide me through this. I really don't know how to react. Or I know how to react, but what I don't want to do is react the wrong way. So, and then at the end of the day, I will put that in my inventory and I'll hand it over to my higher power. Like, oh, you can take this away from me now because I don't need to carry this into tomorrow. I am not prepared to lose my sobriety and to be driven back into something where I was in such despair for so long over something as simple as a tiny seed of resentment. And I think for that analogy really stuck with me and really helped me to see it what it is. It's all well and good you thinking, oh, someone's annoyed me today, or I'm going to go start on them because they've looked at me funny, or I really don't like that person. They've said something out of order to me, and I'm not going to put up with it. I don't think I'm that self-important anymore. Whatever. Someone turns around to me and says something I don't like. They says something I don't like. I've got two choices. I can either confront them and start being an ass about it and make it into something that doesn't need to be, or I could just go, okay, that's fine. That's completely, you're allowed to have whatever opinion you want, and then move on with my life, because I'm not going to allow that to affect me. And I can move on with my life and just be like, well, that's fine. I don't need to feel these perceived wrongs all the time because of the program and because of the fellowship. And I'm going to say it's a bloody lovely thing to have now, because I used to hold on to everything all the time, but in the end I realized really I was just, because I was so into taking drugs and drinking all the time, I didn't have the capacity to deal with any problems because my brain was so messed up. But then when I've come out of that and I've got sober, I can see how ridiculous a lot of my behaviors were. Someone says something nasty to me at work, I'll get home, drink 2 bottles of wine that night, and then go out and get a couple of bags. Why did that need to affect me so badly? It doesn't. I can let it go now and just be like, no. And having a good heart. I mean, not everyone can, I mean, don't get me wrong, not everyone can say, well, we're not perfect. There's no way I'm perfect, and I still react badly to things. I still have defects. I still have pretty bad character defects sometimes. But the difference is I'm now aware of them and I can work on them. And I have other people in this fellowship who understand me. Talking to people in CA is a bit like coming home, because I can call someone up in the fellowship and be like, God, so this happened today and I'm having a bit of a hard time about it because it really annoyed me, and that's me then not letting that seed grow because I'm sharing it. But they understand exactly what I'm talking about straight away. They understand, they get it, because I'm talking to another addict. So I don't need to over explain myself, because if I say something to a non-addict, they might turn around and be a bit like, oh, I don't know what you mean. But you speak to people in CA, they know exactly what you mean. And it's lovely.
Absolutely. And, in the first instance, what we have is a treatment for alcohol and drug addiction. That's what we have in the first instance. We get restored to right thinking around drinking drugs. That's our primary purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the next thing after that, once we're restored to sanity around that, the next thing is to be restored to sanity around the internal life, because many of us, we had external unmanageability because we had internal unmanageability. We weren't happy in our own skin. We weren't happy to be sober. And so we learn about untreated alcoholism. And in other spiritual traditions, it's known as the sinful nature, or the yin and the yang, depending on where you go, in the belief systems, but for our purposes, we call it alcoholism, or the addictive reasoning, or the disease. And the reason why we see it in those terms is, if we don't sort out the internal life and the connection with God, then drinking drugs could easily be there again. You see what I mean? So we keep it focused on the realities of the alcoholic mind, the alcoholic reasoning, or the addictive reasoning. And we realize that what we really need is the ongoing spiritual experience, and many of us, we don't end up in these rooms because we have one too many on a Friday night.
Yeah.
We're in here because we live to use and use to live, or we now, with the disease of addiction, can be arrested at any point, and recovery is possible. So persons can get off the train before the wreck. But many of us, we go through terrible things and consequences before we get clean and sober. You see, that's the reality of it. And so, the old saying is the ancient saying is, he or she that is forgiven much loves much. And you could extrapolate from that, someone that has been through terrible circumstances, they often have more motivation to stay clean.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, but often. you know, the humility that's produced through the things they went through, you know, they're coming completely broken. But hey, don't misunderstand me. Weekend bingers can get clean and stay clean, and are, of course, as welcome as anyone else here. And you know, over the last year or two, I've worked with weekend bingers who, the disease of addiction was arrested before it got any further. You know, so we get folks coming at all different levels of consequences. You see. So the idea of being sort of spiritually viable, a fit spiritual condition, is absolutely at the core of the maintenance of sobriety, I think, and that's what I wanted to draw attention to. Pardon me. So you know, I mean, it's been wonderful looking at those portions. I'd just like to put up on the screen the meetings list for folks. There are lots and lots of meetings. In fact, there are thousands every single, every day, I suppose, if you counted AA and NA, but certainly thousands every week of CA meetings, face-to-face and online. So on the screen just now is or will be in a moment, a meetings list. Now you can pause or rewind this video at any point. Technology is wonderful. There it is. Look, there it is.
It's wonderful when it works.
Yes. Now, wait a moment now. There we go. So there's lots and lots of meetings. Do you want to say something about the meetings, Eve? Or?
Yeah, I can do. So the meetings in the pink box above are the We Can Recover meetings, and you can generally find me and Paul on there. They run every single day, 365 days a year, at 2 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and then 9:30 is a meditation evening meeting, which is lovely to go to. All the colours in blue are on, I believe, every day. And also there are a couple of on there, you've got the helplines on there, and you've got the CA website at the top. If you go onto the CA website, you can actually click on meetings on there, and it will bring up every meeting. And like you say, there are hundreds. You can have ladies only, men only, or mixed meetings. There's family friendly meetings. There's 24-hour meetings, you know, so really there's something all the time if you need to reach out.
Absolutely. Just so, and you know, bear in mind, you can pause this, or you can take a screenshot of it, or you can write down the login codes. The ones in blue are on every single day. So you can basically get lots and lots of meetings. Now, and most of them are on Zoom. Don't be put off Zoom meetings thinking you have to put your camera on. Or less than a quarter or a fifth of participants have their camera on. Nor will you be obliged to speak. You can simply come along and listen. Conversely, if you'd like to say hello and share, you'd be very welcome to do so. Zoom is a free app. It's very easy to use. It's also suggested that you get along to face-to-face meetings, which I think is the meat and potatoes. Now, at the top there, if you're in Britain, if you was to go to cocaineanonymous.org.uk, you would get lots of addresses and places where you can go to a face-to-face 12-step meeting. And the other web addresses are very useful too. So, you know, it's been really great today. Thanks so much for coming along, Eve. That was phenomenal. Yeah.
No worries at all. I've always liked to be here. If anyone has any questions, pop them in the comments, and we'll get back to you.
Absolutely. So look, stay strong, family, stay in prayer, stay in the literature, keep an open mind. And check out the other podcasts on the steps. We've got one on an entire psychic change, the spiritual malady, the ABCs of addiction. There's about 15 personal stories, including your personal story on this channel.
Mine's certainly on there.
And so there's a lot of help available, you know, so stay connected and stay strong. Once again, thanks so much for your time, Eve.
No problem at all. And sending love to everybody who is listening to this. And if you're struggling, please reach out to us.
Good stuff. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye-bye.